We all know that fasting can be very beneficial for weight loss and health in general. But what about ending your fast? Is there a better way to break a fast? So we're going to talk about the ins and outs of breaking your fast in this video today.
All right, so intermittent fasting, kind of an umbrella term. What we're going to do here is break it into two things. So time-restricted eating would be any type of fasting pattern where you are consuming food at some point during the day. And then there's extended fasts, which are going to last longer than a day. So time-restricted eating patterns would be things like 16-8 fasting, 24 fasting, OMAD, 1 meal a day fasting. If you are practicing those types of fasts, breaking your fast with your normal meal will, in most cases, be perfectly fine and you'll feel fine. And you will find that as you get better and better at intermittent fasting and you find that it's easier to extend your fast, you do fine with just reintroducing food as a normal meal.
So if you're fasting for longer than 24 hours, though, there are some things to take into consideration. Yeah. Your body has gone without anything in its digestive tract for a while. So number one, you want to probably break that fast with a smaller meal. And you want to make it something that's pretty easy to digest, maybe some bone broth, a smoothie with some protein powder, even some cooked vegetables, a small amount of cooked vegetables that you can chew up that are going to digest fairly easily.
Right, and you mentioned protein other than the vegetables, and there is some evidence that it is beneficial to reintroduce food with some protein, and that's whether that's helping the metabolic processes along or just protecting the lean mass. There is some evidence that protein in that first reintroduction is a good idea.
Right. So number three, after you've had that first small meal, if after 30 to 60 minutes, if you're feeling pretty good, then you can have a little bit more, and you could even probably have more along what you would typically eat. Just you make it a smaller portion, just so you're not going to overwhelm your digestive system that hasn't seen food for a while.
Right, and the concern, I guess, that we hear about is called refeeding syndrome, when you're on an extended fast and then you reintroduce food very quickly. And this can happen in a prolonged fast, but this is typically rare in those situations. It's a rare condition to begin with, and it's seen in people that have malnutrition, maybe have an eating disorder. But yes, it can happen in someone who is in a prolonged fast.
Right. So refeeding syndrome is what happens when your insulin level gets too low. It kind of shifts the balance of electrolytes in your system. Now, you need electrolytes for just about everything, including your heart, including your brain, your nervous system. So when you reintroduce food, and especially carbohydrate, you raise those insulin levels up, and that sudden raising of low insulin, is going to shift that balance again. It can create the need for certain electrolytes and create a huge imbalance, and that can cause a potentially fatal and very serious condition called refeeding syndrome. Now, one of the most famous cases of this, it's been quite a few years ago, but the singer Karen Carpenter, who had an eating disorder. Under the well-meaning care of her family and doctors, she was in a hospital in a clinical setting. They administered glucose to try and get calories into her body, and that's pure carbohydrate, and that caused this dramatic shift, very rapid shift, and she passed away from that. It's tragic, but they were seeing that in other cases before then, most of the time in clinical settings, and really couldn't identify it. I think Karen Carpenter's case kind of really, they were able to really look at what happened.
Yeah, and she was dealing with an eating disorder, so if you're going into it an extended fast relatively healthy, it's something to certainly keep in mind, but not maybe something that has to be that's scary.
It also brings up the point that you mentioned before about having a little bit more protein versus having carbohydrates when you're breaking your fast. So that's going to kind of let your insulin level gradually come up instead of like it shooting up to the sky. And that gives enough time for electrolytes and things to kind of balance out. So.
Yeah. And you speak a lot of this from experience, from having prolonged fast.
Right. So a year and a half ago, I did a 10-day fast, and we documented that on YouTube. Some pretty miserable days I had. We're not a...
As did I.
Yeah.
Living with you,
Yeah.
yes.
Hi everyone. Title of today's video is How I Felt on Day 7 of a 10-Day Fast. Obviously you see I'm smiling. That's a put-on smile, actually.
Not an angry old guy, but I was not
There were a couple
specifically
of days that you weren't really a chipper.
I was not a happy old guy either.
So 6 weeks ago I finished my 10-day fast. Most of you probably already know that. And the interesting thing was that I did not have the expected result that we, from everything we read, that we were thinking that we were going to get.
We're not big fans of
Right.
prolonged fasting. We've tried some different experiments over the time, and I have especially, and it doesn't seem to do a lot for me other than have some negative consequences to my metabolism.
Right.
But when I did my 10-day fast, I was, kind of following what some of the fasting experts were saying. So I had about 40 calories of bone broth every day just to kind of keep my electrolyte levels, up where they needed to be. And I actually broke my fast with a little, small portion of nuts and seeds. It was considered okay back then. I think they've kind of like backtracked on that, recently, and said that, nuts and seeds may not be the best thing as far as being easily digestible, especially when your stomach hasn't been digesting really anything. Right. But it didn't bother me. I have a pretty cast iron stomach, and an hour or two later, I had a bigger meal, with more proteins and fats. Never, I never had any kind of distress. But like I said, my metabolism has suffered.
Yeah. So the takeaway is, if you are doing a time-restricted type of a pattern where you are going to be eating every day, you should feel fine just reintroducing your normal meal once you get a chance to eat for that day. If you want to do an extended fast, you do need to take a lot of things into consideration, and we do recommend that you do a fast that lasts longer than a day under your doctor's care. So those are some considerations, but the key thing is to have a plan. If you are planning to do an extended fast, have a plan for how to break that fast.
Yep, I think that's key.
All right. Hey, thanks so much for watching. We hope that this is beneficial to you. And please subscribe to our channel, and we will see you in the next video.
See you next week.